Welcome, brave soul. I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. 6 years. 6 years of charting cycles, enduring invasive procedures, swallowing bitter pills, and clinging to hope that withered a little more each month. 6 years of negative pregnancy tests, each one a tiny, stinging betrayal. Jessica traced the floral pattern on the nursery wallpaper, a room that had remained stubbornly empty. Max squeezed her hand. "We could always adopt," he offered, his voice laced with a forced cheerfulness that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jessica sighed. Adoption felt like admitting defeat, a concession to a biological failure she couldn't reconcile. But the alternative was this endless cycle of longing and disappointment. She managed a weak smile. "Maybe. We can talk about it." The subject hung in the air between them, unspoken but heavy. That night, Jessica dreamed of empty swings and silent lullabies. Then one morning she woke with a jolt. Not from a nightmare, but from a sensation deep within her abdomen. A delicate fluttering like butterfly wings brushing against her insides. It was faint, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably there. A sensation unlike anything she'd ever felt. She clutched her stomach, breathless. Could it be? After all this time? "Max," she called, her voice trembling. "Get a pregnancy test. Now." The minutes that followed stretched into an eternity. Jessica paced, prayed, and replayed every symptom she'd ever experienced, searching for a sign, a hint, anything to justify the desperate hope blooming in her chest. When Max emerged from the bathroom, his face was pale, but a watery smile played on his lips. He held out the test. 2 pink lines. "It's positive, Jessica." Joy erupted in the house, a tidal wave of relief and disbelief. They hugged, they cried, they laughed, repeating, "We're going to have a baby," over and over as if trying to convince themselves it was real. But beneath the surface of their elation, a sliver of unease began to creep into Jessica's heart. The feeling in her abdomen had intensified, becoming less like a flutter and more like a distinct, growing presence. An awareness of something else. As the pregnancy progressed, Jessica reveled in the changes to her body, the swelling curves, the heightened senses. She devoured information about fetal development, meticulously decorating the nursery and picturing life with their child. Yet the unease persisted. Unlike other expectant mothers, Jessica felt no fetal movement during the day. No gentle kicks or jabs, no reassuring signs of life within her. She mentioned it to her doctor, who dismissed her concerns as anxiety. "Every pregnancy is different, Jessica. As long as the sonograms are normal, there's nothing to worry about." But the sonograms only showed a perfectly healthy baby, blissfully still. Then at precisely 3 a.m. every night, the baby would awaken. Not with gentle nudges, but with violent, almost frantic kicks that shook Jessica awake in a cold sweat. The force of the movements was unsettling, bordering on painful. The nightly disturbances were accompanied by nightmares. Vivid, disturbing dreams of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of the nursery, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. And always, a feeling of being watched, of being preyed upon. She began sleepwalking, wandering through the house in a daze, muttering strange, archaic phrases she didn't recognize, words that sounded ancient and hungry. Max, bewildered, would gently lead her back to bed, but the chilling pronouncements lingered in the air. One night, the nightmare was different. She found herself in a dark, flickering room, filled with rows upon rows of cribs. The air thrummed with the sound of hundreds of whispers, a cacophony of babies crying, children laughing with unsettling glee. Then a single voice, cold and clear, cut through the din, "This one will walk where the others fell." Jessica woke up screaming, her heart pounding, the chilling words echoing in her mind. She confided in Max, but he remained skeptical. "It's just stress, Jess. Pregnancy hormones. We're both tired." But Jessica knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that something was terribly wrong. The delivery was a grueling ordeal, lasting hours beyond what the doctors had predicted. Jessica's strength waned, and the pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. But she pushed on, driven by the primal desire to hold her child. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Aaron was born. He was healthy, robust, and perfect in every way. But the moment Jessica held him in her arms, a wave of disorientation washed over her. His eyes. They were intensely focused, unnervingly knowing, far too perceptive for a newborn. He didn't cry, didn't squirm. He simply stared, his gaze piercing as if he were looking directly into her soul. The nurses cooed, but Jessica felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something profoundly unsettling about her son's unwavering stare. At home, Aaron maintained his strange pattern. He slept soundly during the day, a peaceful, angelic infant. But from midnight to early morning he was wide awake, alert and watchful. He refused to sleep in his own room, his incessant crying stopping only when he was held close to Jessica. Exhausted but fiercely protective, Jessica insisted on keeping him near, convinced that he needed her presence. Max, though concerned about her fatigue, acquiesced, attributing Aaron's behavior to infant fussiness. Up to age 2, Aaron seemed like a relatively normal if quiet child. He hit his developmental milestones, cooed, babbled, and eventually spoke. But Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He would hum songs she'd never sung to him, melodies that sounded hauntingly familiar yet utterly foreign. He would mimic adult conversations he'd never heard, repeating phrases and inflections with uncanny accuracy. And he would giggle at shadows moving across the walls, his laughter a high-pitched, unsettling sound. Max dismissed her concerns, attributing Aaron's behavior to his intelligence and imagination. "You're tired, Jess. You're overthinking it." But Jessica knew she wasn't imagining things. And then she started hearing whispers from the baby monitor at night. Faint, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to respond when she asked questions aloud. Voices that were not her own, and definitely not her baby's. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, becoming chilling pronouncements laced with malice. Jessica tried to record them, but the recordings always came out as static. She was on her own in this. As Aaron grew older, his behavior began to change drastically, but only when Max wasn't home. It was as if he knew when he could act without fear of detection. He would move Jessica's things, hiding her keys, her phone, her glasses. He would switch out food, replacing her healthy snacks with sugary treats she never bought. He even put broken glass under her pillow, a silent, terrifying act of aggression. When Jessica confronted him, Aaron would deny everything, his eyes wide with innocent confusion. He gaslighted her, telling her she was forgetful, crazy, or not mommy anymore. Max, oblivious to Aaron's true nature, blamed Jessica's instability on stress or postpartum trauma. He insisted she see a therapist, convinced that her perceptions were distorted. Jessica begged him to take her seriously, to see what was happening before his own eyes. But he didn't believe her. By the time Aaron reached age 10, his behavior had escalated from unsettling to outright sinister. He would lock her in closets, trapping her in the darkness, the silence broken only by his muffled laughter. He would whisper threats in her sleep, his voice a chilling rasp that sent shivers down her spine. She found her journals burned, their pages filled with her innermost thoughts and fears reduced to ashes. Family photos were defaced, faces scratched out, eyes blackened. One day, as Jessica was carrying laundry down the stairs, Aaron tripped her. She tumbled down the steep flight, landing in a heap at the bottom. She survived, miraculously, but broke her leg. The pain was excruciating, but the look in Aaron's eyes as he stood at the top of the stairs, a look of cold, calculating satisfaction, was even more terrifying. She told Max it was intentional, that Aaron had pushed her. But Max, ever the skeptic, insisted that Aaron had said it was an accident. Aaron had cried and apologized profusely, convincing Max of his innocence. Jessica felt utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Confined to a wheelchair during her recovery, Jessica became hypervigilant. She realized that if she was going to survive, she had to find proof of Aaron's true nature. She secretly purchased hidden cameras and strategically placed them throughout the house. In the living room, the kitchen, Aaron's room, and her bedroom. She meticulously reviewed the footage, searching for evidence of his malicious behavior. What she saw was horrifying. The cameras captured Aaron speaking in guttural tongues, his voice distorted and inhuman. They showed him setting traps with knives, broken toys, and spilled water on staircases, his face contorted in a mask of cruel intent. And they recorded him talking to someone or something off-screen in the middle of the night, his voice barely audible, yet filled with an unsettling sense of reverence. She heard him say to no one, "Soon they'll both be gone. Then I'll find the next door." The footage confirmed her worst fears. Aaron was not her son. He was something else entirely, something dark and malevolent. One day, armed with irrefutable evidence, Jessica confronted Aaron. She showed him the footage, her voice trembling with rage and fear. He didn't deny it. He simply glared at her, his eyes narrowed, his face twisted in a sneer. "You think Max is my father? he hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're dumber than I thought." "He doesn't know. But you do, don't you? I was never yours. You were just the door." The word struck Jessica like a physical blow. She was just a vessel, a means to an end. Her love, her longing, had been exploited, twisted into something unspeakably evil. When Max got home, Jessica showed him the footage. She begged him to believe her, to see the truth. She played the recordings of Aaron's chilling pronouncements, the visuals of his malicious acts. Finally, faced with irrefutable proof, Max's skepticism began to crumble. He stared at the screen, his face ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. Together they confronted Aaron. They cornered him in the living room, their voices trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. Jessica delivered the ultimatum: either Aaron leaves or she does. That night, as the clock ticked towards 3 a.m., a palpable sense of dread filled the house. Aaron stood in the hallway, listening to their hushed conversation. His eyes were pitch black, devoid of any human emotion. A sinister smile played on his lips. The temperature in the house dropped sharply, sending shivers down their spines. The lights flickered, the electronics shorted out, plunging the house into near darkness. He entered the room, his voice a low, guttural growl. "You should have stayed out of this. This house was promised to me." Aaron possessed inhuman strength. He grabbed Max and hurled him across the room, sending him crashing into furniture like a rag doll. Jessica tried to flee, but Aaron was too fast. He grabbed her by the neck, his grip vice-like, choking the air from her lungs. She fought back, clawing at his face, kicking and screaming. She noticed that he wouldn't go near Max's bookshelf, where a blessed crucifix hung and a bottle of holy water sat. He recoiled from the symbols of faith as if they were burning him. Max, bruised and battered, realized what was happening. He struggled to his feet and yelled, "Jess, run to the corner with the holy items. Now." Jessica stumbled towards the bookshelf, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She grabbed the bottle of holy water and threw it at Aaron. His skin sizzled where the holy water touched him. He shrieked in agony, a sound that was both human and inhuman. Max joined in, hurling more of the blessed liquid at Aaron. The boy writhed and snarled, his body contorting in unnatural ways. His voice multiplied, dozens of other voices crying out through his throat, a cacophony of pain and rage. The floor beneath Aaron began to crack and split open. Shadows poured from the fissures, engulfing him in darkness. As he was pulled into the abyss, he glared up at them, his eyes burning with hatred. He hissed, his voice a chorus of demonic whispers. "This is not the end. I was the first, but I am not the last. The others, they wait." Then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness, leaving behind only the acrid smell of sulfur and the lingering echo of his chilling pronouncements. The room was in ruins, furniture overturned, walls scorched, the air thick with the smell of ozone. Max and Jessica were battered and traumatized, their bodies aching, their minds reeling. They called the police, child services, anyone who would listen. But they couldn't explain what had happened. The footage from the hidden cameras was corrupted, showing only static and Aaron speaking backward gibberish. The authorities were skeptical, attributing the damage to a home invasion gone wrong. They took Max and Jessica's statements, but the underlying implication was clear. They were disturbed, possibly delusional. While cleaning the house, trying to piece their lives back together, Jessica stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of Aaron's old room. Inside, she found an ancient journal, bound in leather, its pages filled with faded ink and cryptic symbols. The journal dated back to the 1800s. It spoke of a gateway spirit, a soul denied birth who sought to return to the world through unsuspecting wombs. It described how these spirits became stronger if they were loved as one's own, but could only manifest fully by sowing madness and betrayal. Jessica read the journal with mounting horror, realizing that she had been a pawn in a centuries-old game, her deepest desires exploited by something ancient and evil. Months later, the house was blessed, cleansed, and quiet. Max and Jessica had put it up for sale, deciding they could not stay there long-term. They had donated Aaron's things, trying to erase his presence from their lives. They were grieving but beginning to heal. One night, Jessica walked past the nursery. The room was empty, stripped bare. But a chill ran down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She cautiously stepped inside. And there it was, the crib, back in its place. A faint whisper, barely audible, echoed from within the crib. "Mother, you left the door open again?" Let us know down in the comments, if you were Jessica, what would you have done after Aaron pushed you down the stairs?
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts.
Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.